Hello, 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 and welcome to the Aware Show. I am really excited about today's conversation because it has to do with your relationship. Relationship's such a hot topic because it's so confusing. How do we relate to each other, specifically in love relationships? Now, first of all, I want to mention if you are listening to this on our podcast, the Aware Show podcast, welcome, thank you, and please become a subscriber if you want to share these shows with people. And if you're listening on the radio or YouTube, please join us on our podcast on demand at any time at theawareshow.com. Now, do you have that inner voice in your relationship that doesn't usually get out? That critical, maybe judgmental complainer in a relationship that you really just talk to your friends about or your relatives, but it doesn't really get across to the relationship because it causes conflict? Do you sometimes shy away from that? Soul statements. These are soul statements, and they pack a powerful punch. They mean so much to you when they're communicated in a way that is easier to hear. And sometimes I've been guilty of this, not speaking, not saying anything. It adds up, it mounts up, and then it lashes out. Not a great way to do it. If you can actually have a guide to successful communication, that is what we're talking about today with an absolute expert in this field, Corey Lyon Folsom. He wrote a book called Soul Statements, and he has been a love coach for many years and has heard so many issues, complaints, relationship stories in his life that he has written a whole book about how to really communicate in a relationship. And I'm so grateful to have you with me, Corey. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm glad to be here, Lisa.
Absolutely. So let's just start real quick about your story. About how long have you been a relationship coach? And then I'm going to ask you, what is the biggest thing that you hear as far as complaints in relationships?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'm a father, and as a love and relationship coach, I've been doing that since 2012, and now I'm an author. And so the the things I hear a lot is my partner isn't really hearing what I'm saying.
Mm,
And they're maybe both people maybe argue for their perspective versus try to listen to what the other person's experience is. And I think it might have been John Gottman who said, make the other person's pain valid. And so offering acknowledgement is a great first step.
interesting. Make the other person's pain valid. So hear what they have to say first. And I love actually that you mentioned that you're a father first. And that is this conversation has to do with all relationships. It could be family relationships, it could be love relationships, it could be work relationships. These communication tools pretty much across the line, right?
Absolutely.
So hear the other person first. What if that
Mm-hmm.
just lights you up like a Christmas tree?
Mm-hmm. And so, well, that's part of how soul statements will help, where you can offer yourself something that's true and resourced and strong. It never changes. Like, oh, you know what? I am actually stronger than my challenges, or there is strength in my center, something like that. And so that gives you that little bit of anchor, a little bit of space to say, I'm going to be okay no matter what is said in this conversation. And so it helps give you that little gap to say, not react, but just respond a little more with a little more caring, a little more space for what the other person's going through.
So I think that has to do with listening to yourself first, or getting that statement ready for yourself first. In relationship coaching, have you noticed that people tend to react like I mentioned earlier, that trigger reaction or that pent up emotion reaction?
Absolutely. And that's one reason that I'm a huge fan of what I call filling your emotional well. And so if you spend some time, quiet time, and that doesn't have to be sitting on a meditation cushion. It might be a strong workout, or a run, or just a walk through a beautiful area. Whatever quiets you and allows you to feel grounded and centered, like you're inhabiting this space that is your body. And so these kind of experiences where we have some sort of intimacy with our own heart, that's what allows us to feel a little more full, a little more resourced, to where we don't have to campaign or blurt out, well, this is what I have to say, or what I feel, and I want to be heard and felt, and I want my pain acknowledged. Whereas if you can just know that you're okay, and that
Mm,
there is strength in your center, as I mentioned, that um, then you're better able to just be present, and without having to, flash some obnoxious billboard about what you're
right.
thinking in that moment.
What about for unsolvable topics like money, finances in a relationship where you're both struggling and there doesn't seem to be, I've heard that opposite money types attract each other, like the spender is going to attract the thrifty person, et cetera, et cetera. And do you find that money tends to be the center of many complaints in a relationship?
uh, It is, however, not a lot with my coach, the people that come to me for coaching. It's more of a tangential issue for my clients. But the thing is, um, I always like to encourage people to go back to their own value and their intrinsic value and worth as a child of God, as a denzian of earth. And if you can speak to your values, and hopefully the other person can have that modeling and then can speak from their values, it gets below the surface circumstance, whether that be money or anything else. And so because when one person says, I'm feeling contracted and anxious, well, you're speaking to the impact on you. And so the other person can more easily hear, oh yeah, well, I feel contracted and anxious sometimes too. And that's relatable, versus I think you, point finger,
Mm,
you're a dummy dog, or whatever other kind of evaluation. That's not as easy to hear, and not as easy to respond to well.
that's great. So if someone, say, for example, is a spender and the other one is thrifty, like I'd given that example,
Mm-hmm.
what they're really both feeling is the same: contracted, anxious about the spendiness or the thriftiness. And if you get to the emotion of what's really being felt, the actual money part goes away, but how you deal with the money part becomes the forefront of the conversation.
Exactly so. And a very wise person said one time that um, you are the world's leading expert on your motivation, and everyone else is the expert on your impact. And so, if we want to be the right companion, be a better communicator, be more caring and considerate for other people around us, then it behooves us to try to understand our impact on other people. And so if we can speak to, instead of saying, you know, I don't like what you did, if you can say, when that happened, I felt unsure, and start from there.
You really have an emotional vocabulary that you're used to using.
Yeah, right.
Very
and
intense.
and, and that can be developed. uh Nonviolent communication, NVC, is a great resource. On their website, they have lists of feelings, and it's just like 4 columns on a page, and just, wow, oh yeah, and that's a great resource to go and scroll down through the list to expand your vocabulary, not just mad or sad, but expand that.
So many feelings. I mean, if those are feelings you probably didn't even know you had,
Mm-hmm.
right? lists and lists and lists, rows and rows of feelings. I feel strange.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable. I feel awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the human being has a beautiful range of emotions, and we tend to just focus on like five: sad, mad, happy, angry, those, whatever they are, and don't go to the deeper. So when you approach something, anything in life, it could be an animal, it could be a child, it could be a work person, it could be a love relationship. What is your go-to technique? Is it to check in with yourself first? I mean, what is your default technique?
One thing that I really go to often is I ask myself a question, and it's in my book, is am I bringing or am I clinging? And so am I going into this exchange looking to get something, or am I am I coming from a place of what do I want to give? What am I bringing? And how might I light this person up? What might delight this other person? And just be interested. And I notice that the times when I'm snarky, or I get a tone in my voice that isn't kind, are inevitably the times when I'm thinking about me
Hmm.
versus the beautiful need or the whatever is being expressed by this other person. Oh, I'd like some help with X, and I'm thinking that's terribly inconvenient for me.
I've
Whereas,
helped you with that so many times before. Yeah.
yeah, again, here we go. Whereas if I think to myself, oh, they trust me and they're having trouble with something, that's wonderful.
That is so especially helpful for elderly parents that have, struggles with their independence, and you can't maybe relate to what they're going through or asking if you're, 30 years younger or whatever. And that is a wonderful technique for, let me be patient with this person's process in life and find out how can I help, rather than just caregivers get fatigued with, and it actually brings up a good point. Caregiver fatigue is another relationship struggle, and it has to do with what you're talking about, not taking care of yourself first and saying, all right, did you say, cle contributing or clinging, right?
Cleaning or bringing.
Clinging or bringing, right? I got the concept. Um, so what can I bring to this person's experience of life? What can I bring to their experience of the aging process? How can I bring more compassion to a conversation? How can I help?
Absolutely. And what kind of person do I think I am? And I am I in congruence with that? And oftentimes before I arrive someplace, I pull up, I'll sit in my car for an extra minute or two and just feel who I am and how I want to be. So I'm more aligned with, oh yeah, this is what I want to bring to this exchange. And and just just centered, connected, grounded, and all right, let's go.
A good way to do that is, after you've been in a conversation, fairly consciously or unconsciously, to sit in your car afterwards and say, what didn't I bring to that conversation? What could
Yep.
I have brought more of? Did
Mhm.
I do this? Did I laugh? Did I play? Did I talk? Did I criticize? Did I judge? It's a good way to kind of recon a conversation and say, maybe I could do this different next time.
That's right. That's very insightful because if I say, wow, I was kind of judgmental back there, and am I a judgmental person? I don't want to be. Let's try to work with that.
How can I do better?
Exactly.
Did you write soul statements because you've seen relationship struggles so much that you really wanted to just contribute to the conversation?
Yes, in a way. What I found was that I was saying some of the same things to many different clients, and I thought, wow, that's worthy of writing about if I'm telling so many people. And so I thought, oh, I'll write a blog, and
Yeah, but you found a
expanded.
formula that works.
That's right. I hired a writing coach to help me do that because it's my first book, and so she helped me immensely. And here we are. And I you asked about some of the things that people talk to me about, and another common question is, how do I move beyond tension with my partner? Or how do I prepare myself to meet someone new and not have the same experience I had all those other times, the same BS, the same poor patterns. and
Hmm.
and so the good news is better communication is a learned skill. And we can learn things and we can put them into practice and we're better. How great is that? Like, oh, a complaint fast. That's a good one. Oftentimes couples will benefit from, complaining is just not going to happen for a week, a month. And the real pro way to do it is that includes the silent ones that you don't say out loud.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's more harmful to yourself. That's kind of how we started this conversation, was the inner conversations that you're having with yourself that you're not necessarily getting out into the relationship festering. How can you do that differently? And your suggestion to start off with is having this real soul conversation with yourself first. And I love that you address dating, because there's so many single people that are looking like, how do I do this? This is not what I'm looking for right away, or I'd like this person to know this about me. How do you set yourself up for this level of a successful conversation?
Yeah. Well,
Big
one
topic.
thing I also say in the book is clarity is the new sexy.
Love it.
So this is what I'm up for. This is not what I'm not up for. And just being that version of authentic. That doesn't mean you spill all your concerns, but that you're just clear, which of course you have to first be clear in order to then speak clearly, but just getting clear about what I'm up for, what I'm not up for, and just communicating that. Ask the other person, hey, I'm proposing we do this. How does that land for you? And versus saying, what do you want to do? Or what do you think about that? Just say, you know what? I'm up for this in this way. What do you think?
Hmm. Okay, so this is what you're calling a soul statement, right?
Well, a soul statement is a present time reminder. So something you're saying that's true in present time. So I'm a fan of affirmations, but this kind of traditional affirmations that we think of are kind of calling in a desired state. So we're emotionally inhabiting some future version of us. Whereas a soul statement is just reminding yourself about what's true and good and resourceful about yourself, like an emotional postcard saying, you got this. So an example would be, my heart is a trusted guide. I can call upon the grit inside of me. And so there is strength in my center. And so when you have these unhelpful thoughts of, well, I'm not sure, or I don't know, or I don't think I can, when the actual words that I use are, I used to think that. And what's actually true is I can trust my deep knowing to guide me. And just the power of it comes when you feel it and you go and your cells go and your bones settle in and you're like, yeah. Then so you're giving your brain a better message. And so you're feeling the truth of it, the rightness of it. And then your next thought can be a better one. Your next action can be colored by this reminding yourself of your own strength.
So, soul statements is about starting, like I love in the book, you give examples of soul statements. One of them is, wisdom is at my center.
Mm.
The other one is, in my center, I belong. I am held in love. These are starting sentences. And I would love it actually if you could share. We were talking a little bit before the show about the snakes, right? And that is a great, I'm going to blow your blog, but can you share that with us a little bit? Corey's going
Sure.
to have a blog about this later.
Okay. Well, I had about a couple weeks ago, I was traveling and I had pulled off on this little dirt road to just rest, maybe walk around a little, and there was a rattlesnake a little one, maybe about a foot or so long. So, uh, and I thought, oh, how cool is this? And so I went over and I was taking pictures with my phone. And then after a minute or two, the snake coiled up. It was kind of stretched out and it coiled up and it struck at me and it struck at me again. And I stepped back and it kept striking. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I made a mistake.
Run.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I realized that I had neglected to first pause and open my heart to this amazing creature and connect with the place and the moment and this this snake and ask if I could be here with it and ask if the picture would be okay. And I didn't do any of that. I'm just like, oh, excited, click, click, click. And so the snake let me know, hey, wait a minute. You didn't ask me if this was okay.
Have you done that in the past, though? Connected with nature and asked the animal and had a positive experience?
Yes, I can remember one time walking around a bend in there was this abandoned dirt road on the side of this mountain, and it had probably never seen a vehicle in 15 or 20 years because there was little trees growing up in it that were 15 or 20 years old. And so it was a forest trail basically now. And I came around this little bend and I looked up to see a mother bear standing on her hind legs with a little baby bear at her feet, looking at me like, seriously? Like, what the heck, man? And I stopped and I just intuited, I knew instantly that if I did anything but open my heart, I was dead meat. I was toast. And
Wow.
so I was like, oh, wow. And I just opened my heart. I just felt my heart expand and open. And I opened my hands. They were down by my sides. I opened my hands and I just thought, I didn't think the thought, I just felt, I love you. And she was so beautiful in this dappled sunlight on her little cinnamon fur. And it was just, I was astounded and in
That's more of a
wonder.
spiritual experience. My
Yeah.
goodness.
And
I
she just
mean,
looked at me like, interesting. And I just stood there and I kept my heart open. And then she looked down at her cub, and the cub went up the hill into the spruce trees. And she looked back at me and looked at the cub and then thought, and then went up into the trees. And I changed what I was doing. I turned around and walked backwards to just get out of that zone and just
yeah.
sat on a log for a half hour and be like, okay. All
Probably wise. So
right.
I prefer to do it with the animals if they're maybe not there because, and I have to just show you though, this is what I found this morning.
Ah,
Isn't this
nice.
beautiful? So I was on a mountain bike ride this morning and
Mhm.
this feather is on my path and it's a very unique feather. It was
Yes.
I don't know what it's not your typical hawk feather.
Not.
It's very light, right?
Yes. It's a
And
great horned owl, right side secondary wing feather.
excuse me?
A great
Oh,
horned owl, a
what
right
are
side
you
wing.
serious? Are you
Yeah.
really an owl feather? I didn't.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. You're a nature tracker, aren't
Yeah. A
you?
great horned owl.
What? Oh my gosh, this is so synchronistic. So the owl was not present, but the feather was right in my path. And I go on this path all the time. And I've never seen a feather, much less this much of a unique feather.
Mhm.
And I passed the feather and I heard a very loud go get the feather. And I was on an steep uphill. And I'm like, oh, that means I got to get off and then get back on the bike and restart on a hill. I'm like, nope, go get the feather. And that's so amazing that you knew that this was a gray horned owl. Do you know any symbolism of the gray horned owl? I know we're getting off topic, but
um, I don't know a lot about that.
oh, Gina just texted it's the
Oh.
symbol of Athena. Oh my gosh, that's my strength wisdom keeper is Athena.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. What a moment. You're really magical. I mean, I love that we just diverted to this part of the
Yeah.
conversation because it's all about using your intuition and your synchronicities within relationship. And this is such a sweet conversation around relationship because it's not like this go get save the hero, damsel in distress types of conversation. This is a very beautiful conversation, just like the feather of an owl.
Yeah. And the owl is really noted for silence. When it flies, it's silent. It has that the feather kind of has that little velvety
Yeah.
feel. So that's part of what makes it silent through the air.
It is so soft. That's so interesting.
Hmm.
Gosh, wow, it's really unique too, because this one side of it is clearly shorter, but it's grown that way.
Yes. Right.
I absolutely love that we got to have this conversation about the owl feather because it's just like what you bring to a conversation in a relationship. It's like almost being a relationship whisperer. You look towards the soul, find out what needs to be taken care of inside of you first, and then you bring that communication to a relationship.
Hmm.
And another beautiful soul statement is example. I am a treasure. My heart is loving and strong. Earth energy is at my core.
Right, right. And so imagine that you're having something less than optimal in, say, relationship. And if you remind yourself of what you just said, something like that, you remind yourself what you're made of and who you really are. And you can't help but just shift a little bit into a better state and be better able to say what you need, say what you want, say what isn't working in a good way, and all to the good.
Now, do you teach people in the book how to make their own soul statements?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, can you share that with us?
Well, sure. It starts with spending some time where you can just be and you can think and feel, maybe some kind of quiet environment, and you want to quiet your thoughts so that the what your soul has to say can percolate up to your conscious thinking. And and I mean, my first vision quest that I did at age 17, 17, 18, where I sat in a 10-foot circle for 4 days and 3 nights, hoping to get some kind of great insight on my life. And uh, it was pretty disappointing for 3.5 days because I'm like, I'm sitting here and I'm so super bored. And I've thought about all of the stuff that I'm not doing, because you're not eating. There's no shelter, there's no book, there's no journal. There's nothing to do but sit there and observe the natural world. And uh,
Where were you?
I was in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey,
Mm.
South Jersey.
Mhm.
So what you think Barnegat Bay, and you go west. And so uh, and then when I was actually just thinking, well, I guess I'll just pick up my um, little plastic tarp that I had in case I put over me in case it rains, which it didn't. And my water jug, I think, well, I guess I'll just go back. And then that's when because I wasn't trying, that's when the realization came. And I just heard the voice so clearly. And it said, "You are a man." I was
Oh,
like, and it was so powerful and it was so sure. And I got it. And that was worth the 4 days and 3 nights just to have that so um, powerfully come to me and so clear. And so if we
what a
can just,
beautiful coming of age
yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Yes.
And so but we can all make little mini quests, if you will, just a few minutes of quietness with your heart and just being open to the messages from your body, from your spirit, and just being in that being in wonder and at the world, at wow, I have this body and I can talk and think and all this stuff, and
Hmm.
just let that be not a bunch of thinking, but just a feeling of wow, what is there here for me? And allow the messages from your heart, from your body, just bubble up until your soul, because your soul speaks usually in a soft voice, a whisper from spirit, if you will. And that's what we're trying to hear. And so we have to quiet ourselves. And, uh, and so when we have those realizations and like what's right about me is always available,
Mm.
also what's wrong is always available too, right? So, but
Oh,
but
I love
then,
what you said. What's right about me is always available if
yeah,
you take the time to listen.
yeah. And if I think I'm less than or I'm in some unhappy circumstance, I can remember that and go, you know what? What's right about me, what's right about the world is actually always available and I can choose. And so, uh,
And I do love that you do it in nature. I do the same thing. I find that solace in nature. And
yeah,
that's why my mountain bikes are my rides are my meditation because it's the same. I do the same loop every time because my body knows it and I know the loop really well. And I just can think and drift
nice.
and just take care of, just do whatever I do. And I get, sometimes I don't even remember going on the trail because I start this one specific downhill and it's my gratitude trail. So I'm thanking all of my guides and beings and angels and ancestors down at the beginning of this trail. And when I get to the bottom, because of the recent rains, there's three stream crossings that have never been there before. So you have to hop off three times. And it gets me back into my mind. And then I think, oh my goodness, what did I just get? That's my communication time from spirit. And then I got three really clear messages and I paused and I create these. This is so funny. Nobody knows that. I mean, I just go through this every time. I create a memory sentence. So it was sage, Zen, and, it was like three things that I needed to do and people that I needed to call and, ideas that came in from spirit. And so then I create a memory sentence and then I go about my ride.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
same trail all the time as my gratitude
Yeah.
trail.
And,
Yeah.
you can up level as you're just describing, you can up level this kind of self-care by calling it soul care. And it's just more intentionalizes that, oh, self-care is soul care. And
Mhm.
so I'm connecting with my soul, I'm listening to what my soul might have to offer in this kind of form of self-care.
Uh-huh. And that's how you come up with your soul statement.
Yeah, any kind of thing that gets you into that place where you can hear the messages of your spirit.
Hmm. So soul statements are your own secure, quiet, knowing space. This is your own place where you know who you are. This is your personal signature.
Absolutely. I love that personal signature. And so what we can do is, we can't maybe live in that quiet space all day, every day, but we can take the soul statement to remember who we are, to remember, oh, this is what I got. This is what I find when I get quiet. And so, uh, my inner alignment is always available, or my self care allows me to be more present. And so we can carry the messages from that time into any circumstance or situation.
So can you have several soul statements?
Yes, and I that's how I do it. And so I have a soul statement kind of specific to whatever is happening.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, I might say, my body is healing itself. And I recently talked to a client who just has one soul statement that applies to everything. And that's awesome. So, I
Yeah.
mean, she says, I got this. I got this. I got this. And that's it. That handles everything for her. So that's great too.
I love that. I noticed you had here one. There's a well of contentment inside of me. That's funny because first I read there's a wealth of knowledge inside of me. And that's maybe my soul statement. There's a wealth of knowledge inside of me
Yes, that's wonderful.
to go through life and being valued for my knowledge. That's interesting. So
Mhm,
you really just need to look at how it comes to you.
mhm, mhm.
And the book and the journaling exercises and the prompts in the book are a way for you to get to that quiet place, a guide.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of journaling and
Yeah, no, I mean, I
honestly.
love it. It's like you're a wilderness guide back to the soul. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, in the wilderness, I would around midday when we paused on our activities, I would actually have every student go find a place by themselves, and for an hour or so I would call them back, and the expectation was they would have written at least one page in their journal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this, I'm sure, helps so much with people that are wanting to get out of the city noise or even their own head noise, anxiety, depression, loneliness. Um, do you lead these groups often?
I was a wilderness guide from 1983 on and off and until 2002.
Oh, for 30 years. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not continuously. I would work a season, or one time I worked 3 years nonstop, another time 3 years nonstop, but then other times just a season here and a season there. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And have you ever had people not hear a message?
Sure. Sure.
And what do you do in that case?
Well, can you be more specific what you mean about when
Not hearing a
context?
message. So if they look for maybe a soul statement or something that makes and resonates true with them, but they hear nothing.
Yeah. Uh, well, they can they can I used to have people actually journal this, because uh, when they're maybe trying to, they don't have a understanding of their higher power or God. I can say, well, start making a list of everything you think God isn't. It's like, oh, critical, vengeful, angry, and all that stuff. And so it's like, okay, so now you have a list of everything you think God isn't. Well, then if God isn't critical, would God be maybe understanding? And so you kind of develop it that way. And so the same with yourself. You can say, well, what kind of person am I? Am I a judgmental person? Yeah, okay. Well, is that really me, or is it my head? It's like, yeah, that's just me in my head. So,
Uh-huh.
what
Uh-huh.
is my heart? Oh, my heart is generous, or my heart is kind. And so you develop this kind of self-knowledge that way. It's just little steps.
Wow. Now, in soul statements, you go through the idea and the concept of writing the soul statement. And then how does it come into play when you have um conflict in a relationship, when you have that level of maybe complaint in a relationship or the intimacy is gone in a relationship?
Sure. Well, and I should say that a soul statement generally is said silently inside your own
To
head.
yourself,
Yeah,
yes.
you're not going to be maybe blurting those out in a conversation with your beloved.
Right.
Uh, and so it's just a way to connect with your own value, and and realize that you're better than maybe the thing you just blurted out.
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
and so you can acknowledge who you really are at your depth, and connect more with who you want to be and how you want to be, and because you want to be congruent. And so you're if I believe this, if I truly believe I'm a kind person, and then I'm not acting kindly, well, one of those has to change. Either I have to act with more gentleness, or I have to believe that I'm not a kind person. And
Hmm.
so that kind of self inquiry helps us align with who we really are and how we act. We're trying to be more congruent with all of that.
Mm.
And so, in that soul statement, as I mentioned a little bit before, it allows that little bit of space to just suspend judgment, to listen to the other person, and, acknowledgement. Oftentimes that's the main thing somebody wants if they're arguing for why they didn't like what happened. If you can just acknowledge, and the thing I love about acknowledgement is you don't have to agree. You can say, I get that this is distressful for you. Well, I don't agree with why they think it's distressful or whatever,
Right, right. You don't have
but
to
I can
agree.
say, I get this is distressful for you. And so just the more you're able to um, know your own value, the more you're able to offer a little bit of space to the other person. And
Yes.
we can, there's another thing I like, I call it speed to empathy, where, and where if we feel some wounding or injustice to our heart, we can give a little love to our heart. We can acknowledge our own heart. Like, oh, I see, I see this doesn't feel good. Or, oh, that doesn't feel good. And we're saying it to our own heart and just offer a little love, a little empathy, tune with our own heart. And so then we're less needy to blurt out like, I don't feel good, and so whatever that,
Right.
specific words are. And so that's that. If we can attune, offer some emotional salve, kind of a way of almost parenting yourself a bit,
Right.
and we can give our own heart some acknowledgement, then we're more easily able to acknowledge another person. Because one of the problems with arguments is each person wants to be acknowledged before they're willing to offer acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
so if we can give it to ourselves, we're better able to offer it to another person.
Yes, I love that. And does that have that has to do with conflict and relationship is to have that I love that speed to empathy.
Yeah.
Let's get empathetic now. But the whole idea of intimacy in a relationship where um there's lack of intimacy or just stress around it or um communication breakdowns or anything like that. What do you suggest for that?
Well, firstly, typically when a couple comes to me, or maybe it's a single person doing some coaching and they're in a relationship with someone else, that they're already what I call emotionally sunburned. And so now a little poke hurts more than if it wasn't the 100th time.
Hmm.
So uh, and what you do in that situation is slow down. It's like, okay, let's slow down. Let's not be so quick to say something back. Let's just, tap the brakes a little bit, and just, can we ask the other person what's really at the heart of it for them? It's and so it's like being uncomfortable is totally fine and natural. Of course you're going to be uncomfortable, but reacting badly, maybe not such a good thing. And
Hmm.
so, and sometimes I'll actually, if I find myself having some kind of unkind tone in my voice, maybe my partner might give me a look or react in some way, or maybe I catch myself, I go, oh, you know what, that's not how I wanted to do that. And I'll say, you know what, that's not how I wanted to say that, please let me do it again. I call
Yes.
it the power of the redo. and and of course that takes bravery and
Yes.
eating a little bit of a slice of humble pie, but it's so worth it. And it's like, and when you don't know what to do, just offer more of you. Just um and tune into your center, say a soul statement inwardly, and just be better. uh and
You know,
so
I mean, I know you, and I mean, Judith Orloff is your amazing partner, and she's written multiple books on emotional empathy, and your household must be just filled with conversation. I love it. But what about if you have a partner that isn't as evolved, that isn't as emotionally aware, that is more like, kind of just, I don't know, sports watching, fun, loving type of, not really the most intimate conversational, but you still love them, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
How do you do
And
that with someone that's not their skill or
yeah,
forte?
I think it's just fine and wonderful to focus on someone's good qualities and praise what you want to see more of. And maybe um ask yourself, oh, am I wanting um to see more of X or Y, more of a heartfelt conversation, or more of a thoughtful acts. It's best generally to model that first. Am I giving what I'm expecting to receive? And so we can, another great thing is to substitute requests when you otherwise would have had a complaint. And so
Ooh, that's a
instead of
good one.
saying, yeah, instead of saying, hey, the garbage hasn't been taken out yet. I mean, it's a same old example, but
Yes.
it's a good one because garbage has to be taken out. Instead of saying, oh, that's, I'm disappointed because you didn't take the garbage out, however that comes out, you can say, you know, it makes me feel really warm and fuzzy, or it just makes me
Okay.
feel, I feel like we're a team when you take
When,
garbage out. It feels good to me, and I feel, I I just feel supported. And so you're kind of phrasing it more of, this is how I feel, but it's a request versus, oh, you didn't do it again. Hey, do you mind doing it now?
so
There's a big difference.
I feel like we're a team, or I feel like you care when you pick up your clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
And
that's the hardest thing, is being in a relationship and cleaning up after someone else. That's a tough one for me.
yeah, yeah. And and the more I can proactively speak to, my unmet needs, it's like an antidote to getting snappy.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's if I could just be
Even
clear at
with
the beginning.
children, I feel like you care more. Yep. When you,
Yeah.
what were you
Yeah.
gonna say?
Oh, just that uh if I can if I can talk to um I feel so much more calm when the kitchen is cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
And would you be willing to help me, versus just looking at it and going, oh man, and then if 10 minutes later you're like, rah, rah, rah.
Right.
It's, you just speak to what you really, you know would like.
Right, 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 right. So, especially when it comes to children, I mean, even adult children or younger children, I feel like you care when I feel like we're a team when yeah.
Yeah.
I had someone once say to me, it was Lisa Nichols, and she said to say to her child, I apologize if I led you to understand that you can leave your stuff out.
Nice.
I love that. I
Yeah, yeah,
apologize if I
yeah.
led you in any way to understand
Right,
that
right,
you can
right,
leave your stuff on the floor.
right, right. I am so sorry I didn't make that clear.
Yeah, that's not the case.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's very interesting. So a lot of people these days work together, work from home, I should say, maybe not in the same industry or business, but work from home, live together, um, and go through the stresses of life together and become more roommates than they
Mhm.
become relationships. How do you put the spark back in a relationship after that?
Well, there's a few places to start. One is to, as I said, focus on what you like about them, focus on what they do right, look for things to praise them for, because you're trying to build a little goodwill, you're trying to build a little warmth. And also, what happens a lot is that they withhold touch because I'm not up for sex, so I don't want to create the wrong impression.
Mm,
And so they don't give a little, squeeze on the neck, or a warm hand on the elbow or the shoulder, or the, look in their eyes and say, thank you for doing that,
mhm.
and with the touch. And so they don't want to create the wrong impression, so they hold back. Whereas I'm a big fan of, I call it non-obligation touch. And so unless somebody says, I'm open for more, just let the touch just be its own experience, its own uh, beautiful gesture. And so, um, I encourage people to start looking for things to praise the other person for, offering a little touch with the clear understanding that I'll let you know when a touch is means more.
Mhm,
But otherwise,
mhm.
you want to be able to start some physical contact in a non-threatening way. So that's where
That's
I,
loving. No, that's very loving, and it takes care of you and takes care of the other person at the same time, and there's no rejection in
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
and that has again, it starts with the clear communication. It starts there. with clear communication, and that,
Mhm.
and also taking care of yourself first in terms of your own personal conversation with yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, and just start speaking to your needs versus um, complaining about something they did or didn't do. You know,
Hmm.
talking about your impact. You know, keeping trying to speak more in terms of feelings and needs versus evaluations and critique.
That again, perfectly beautiful communication and clarity from someone who's conscious, but you have someone who is not consciously aware of their feelings. It has to do with emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And how do you get there? What's like step one to this beautiful emotional intelligence that you and your partner have?
Just modeling it, modeling, and it doesn't have to be a bunch of fancy phrases or anything like that. Just model caring, model some serenity, model speaking to the bullseye of what you're
Hmm.
wanting and what's happening with you, and not necessarily asking anything of them, but just saying, I'm just talking about, or I'm just speaking to what's going on with me.
Right.
You know?
You have a background, I think, in Tantra, right? Where you are
Yes,
a Tantra coach. Can you
yes,
tell a little bit about what that is and how that has influenced your work?
absolutely. So the way I think about Tantra is it's essentially an attitude and a practice of paying really close attention to the moment. And so, I think the more deeply you're present and you're in the moment, you're inhabiting where you are and why you are and how you want to be, the more you're being tantric. So if you're super present and clear on a phone call, well, that's a tantric phone call.
Ah, and you can
You
be
know,
done with their relative or whatever.
yeah, and also I when I think of tantra, I think about the practice, the discipline, if you will, or blisscipline, of living in wonder and feeling that life is a gift and that there's joy to be had here and there and everywhere. And so that looking for the wonder in things is tantric in my estimation. And I also, one of the tantric principles I think about is that the same creator who made your mind made your body, including the parts we don't usually talk about. And so it's all a gift from the creator, and it's all to be used with, right livelihood, right action, right thinking. And so we hold that those times where we come together as two bodies as holy sacrament and that divine union. I like to think that sex stands for sacred energy exchange, and if we can hold it in a higher standing, then all to the good. And the soul statement I think of when I think about tantra is, I have a beloved that dwells within. And if I believe that about myself, well, then I naturally believe this other person has a beloved that dwells within too. It's not just me. I'm not unique in any way. And so it's like, oh, I'm the beloved that dwells within me. My beautiful heart is meeting this other beautiful heart. And that's really the basis for uh, Tantra, if you will.
That's a beautiful explanation. Yes, it really makes it accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and I think about,
About
there's
presence.
tantric techniques, but that I don't think that's tantra. I just think, well, those are just things you could do. The
Right.
tantra is the paying attention, being as present as you can be, in just allowing the wonder of life to be. Uh,
Presence and wonder. That's a
yeah.
wonderful way to go through life and any relationship, with presence and wonder.
Mhm.
I thank you so much. This has been such a lovely conversation and enlightening and accessible and friendly and everything that should be in a relationship
Yeah.
of
Thank
any
you.
kind. of any
Thank you.
kind, really. So thank you. And again, the my guest is Corey Lyon Folsom, and the name of the book is called Soul Statements. And if you like this show, you can share it with your friends on our podcast, the Aware Show podcast. And you can also find Corey's information there. And it is his website is core, C-O-R-E, relationship.com. Thank you again, Corey. See you
Hey,
soon.
all right, Lisa, this has been fun. Thank you.
Very fun. Take care. All right. And until next time, I invite you all to stay aware.